In terms of my baseball team, this is, I think, the best way to say this. I thought it was tomorrow. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 79 of Hitting for the Cycle. I'm your host, Ben Kruse, alongside my co-host, Ryan Touhey. Ryan, it's the aftermath of one of the biggest days of the MLB season, and that is the trade deadline. And man, oh man, we had a lot to get into in this overall episode today. But before we get obviously into all of that fun stuff, Ryan, it's officially now August, so it's practically speaking the last month of summer. It feels like it just flew by like crazy, and just hopefully we just enjoy the rest of what we have. But how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Yeah, you're right. It's the end of July. August is here, and the MLB trade deadline. This one specifically, I think is going to be one of the most talked about trade deadlines in recent memory. And yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I was in Cooperstown, New York last weekend for the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, so I got to see CC Sabathia, Billy Wagner, Ichiro Suzuki, Dick Gallen, and Dave Parker going into the Hall of Fame and receive their plaques. So that was pretty good. It was a cool experience. I'll always remember that.
Yeah, that's obviously a friend of mine actually works at the Baseball Hall of Fame. So if I was able to get maybe a connection when you're up there, maybe I could have told you it. But just the overall experience, I mean, that's obviously something on my bucket list. And that must have been just you and your obviously who you went up with, or who we know specifically. That must have just been an absolutely incredible experience. So I'm really happy for you, and really happy for, of course, the people that got inducted in that ceremony. Obviously, now, folks, to get into this episode, right? We're going to just go through our socials really quick. So, Hitting for the Cycle at HFTC ETB on the M to the Bench Podcast Network. Make sure to subscribe to M to the Bench Podcast Network on YouTube. Follow Ryan Touhey at RTouhey97. And of course, you guys can follow me at Ben Kruse 144. Of course, I was put a lot of stuff on my X yesterday throughout the trade deadline. So, of course, you guys want to follow me over there and all the latest content I have over there. That's, of course, where you guys can find me. Follow us at Hitting for the Cycle at HFTC ETB. Every week, we, of course, have our stuff on YouTube. So on youtube.com/ETB Network is, of course, where you guys can find us. If you guys are on the go throughout this whole summer season, listen to Hitting for the Cycle wherever you guys may be getting your podcast from. And Hitting for the Cycle is presented by our friends over at Playback. Stay tuned to hear more throughout the show. All right, so Ryan, before, of course, we get into the trade deadline and all pretty much the latest rundown of the big day that transpired yesterday, we do unfortunately have to start with some really sad news. Ryan Sandberg, longtime Chicago Cub legend. I mean, when you think about the Chicago Cubs, he is basically up there as one of the greatest Cubs to ever play the game. And on July 28th, we lost a good one. He was somebody that reportedly was battling through
Prostate
death. What's that?
Prostate cancer, I believe.
Prostate cancer. Thank you. Yeah, he was going through some type of cancer. I was trying to remember. That he revealed in January of 2024. He did end up beating the prostate cancer in May of 2024, but apparently last December, he announced that the cancer had come back and it started to spread again. So, unfortunately, he was not lucky and fortunate enough the second time around. They don't know in terms of when his funeral is going to be, but just rest in peace to the Sandberg family, and rest in peace to, of course, baseball, because we've talked a lot, unfortunately, with some deaths throughout this overall Hitting for the Cycle year, and this, of course, is up there. I mean, of course, all of them, we put into heart, but this is one of the top ones, unfortunately, that we lost.
Yeah, when I was at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony on Sunday, they brought up the fact that Ryan Sandberg couldn't be present because he wasn't doing too well. And unfortunately, I kind of had a feeling inside of me that he didn't have too much time left. So unfortunately, it wasn't surprising for me to hear that he had passed away. I just had a feeling that the cancer was really starting to spread and was really aggressive, and it was just going to be too much for Sandberg to overcome. And it's sad. He was only 65 years old, not old at all. He was obviously a longtime Cub. He did have a very brief stint with the Philadelphia Phillies in 1981, a cup of coffee with them. And then the Phillies traded him to the Cubs the following year, and that's where he would spend the remainder of his career. He played for the Cubs from 1982 to 1994. He took 1995 off. He actually announced his retirement for that season. But then he came back for 2 more seasons with the Cubs in 96 and 97. He was a 10-time All-Star. He was the 1984 NL MVP, and that Cub team made it to the National League Championship Series. He was one of the greatest defensive second basemen of all time. He won 9 Gold Glove Awards straight from 1983 to 1991. He was a 7-time Silver Slugger in 1984, 1985, and then from 1988 to 1992. And he led the National League in home runs in 1990, and he has his number 23 retired, deservedly so, by the Chicago Cubs, and he's also a member of the Baseball Hall of Fame, like I mentioned. So, yeah, the Cubs definitely lost a franchise for, if you ask me. If you were to ask me, he's up there with the names of some of the all-time Cub greats, such as Ernie Banks and Sammy Sosa. That's a tough one to lose. And rest in peace to Ryan Sandberg, and condolences go out to his friends and family and to the Cubs organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's brutal to hear, right? And our thoughts and prayers go out to the Sandberg family, and just hopeful that yeah, it's tough. All right. Next, we're going to go through Emmanuel Clase. He was suspended indefinitely after being paid leave through August 31st. Ryan, this is now the second Cleveland Guardian player that has been suspended due to some gambling situations, right? We talked about it a couple weeks ago on our show, Luis Ortiz, in terms of some of the pitches that were potentially, looked as, sketchy, right? This is, of course, is another one. There's some stats out there. I can't obviously remember the overall stats again. In terms of like the uncompetitive pitches, right, from Class A, but there was a clip. I don't know if you got the chance to see it on social media, where he he essentially spiked a first pitch, fastball, and that's kind of one of the pitches that a lot of people have been, showing on social media is like, oh, like, can this be obviously kind of something that, was kind of more into detail. I don't know why the Guardians have 2 guys specifically that have been now under investigation, but here we are. And, Class A is one of the best guys out there, right, in terms of closing with overall stuff. And, right before, of course, the trade deadline, we had a lot of closers, really, really good closers that ended up being on the move. And I think that, heck, if he didn't go into this certain situation, he probably was going to be one as well, too, that very well could have been moved, because the Guardians are in a great overall spot right now. So, yeah, it's a really, really tough situation. And, now specifically, we were talking about how Luis Ortiz and kind of what the situation would kind of turn out to be. Well, now you have somebody else, and you have somebody, too, in which if you're the Guardians and you want to try to kind of get back in the race, this is one of the last things you need with this baseball team. So the Guardians have been kind of going through it pretty much on and off the field. And obviously with this Class A news, it just completely just doesn't help them.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking news to hear, considering Clase A, like you mentioned, is one of the biggest names in baseball, and he was probably going to be the most sought after coveted relief pitchers at this year's trade deadline. And to have this just come up, it's not a good look. It's not good at all. And
No.
I don't exactly know when that pitch that he threw was, or who it was against necessarily, the one that they're investigating. But regardless, I mean, he is suspended indefinitely through the end of August, and we'll see if they find any more conclusive evidence that confirms that he was in fact involved in something pretty serious or illegal. And if you're the Guardians, a Guardians fan, or even a baseball fan in general, you hope that they don't find anything, because Clase, he's good for the game. He's the best closer in baseball, arguably, right now. But at the same time, if he did deliberately, get himself involved in something, then there's really no place for that. This rule, you shall not gamble or bet on baseball or fixed games, has been in place for almost as long as the league has been in existence. So, obviously, if he did something, along those lines, then he's got to be punished. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no justifying it then. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I hope it's not. I hope, he wasn't involved in anything illegal, obviously. But by the sounds of it, it sounds like he was, and it sounds like Luis Ortiz was. So we'll see. We'll see what the severity is here. But regardless, it's been a tough year for the Guardians, and I know for a fact that they can't wait for this season to end regardless. And it's not been a smooth sailing. It has not been smooth sailing in Cleveland this season.
Yeah, no, 100%. The team did make out a statement really quick before we get into, obviously, a lot of the fun stuff throughout the remainder of the program. So it was on July 28th, actually, the same day that, unfortunately, Ryan Sandberg passed away. So we had some big news to start the program both on the same day. But the team statement was the Guardians have been notified by Major League Baseball as part of their sports betting investigation. Emmanuel Clase has been placed on non-disciplinary pay leave per agreement with the Players Association. We have been informed that no additional players or club personnel are expected to be impacted. The Guardians are not permitted to comment further at this time and will respect the league's confidential investigating process as we continue to fully cooperate. So Clase is going to be on paid leave throughout August 31st. And heck, we would hope to have a certain kind of situation and resolution, hopefully by then, with one of the best games closer. But yes, just another tough news to hear, especially if you're a Guardians fan, your best guy is out. And two guys now specifically on this, and just hopeful that this just doesn't start becoming a trend too, because, now, of course, it's now the second guy that's happened to. So we just kind of hope that, obviously just people are just kind of aware in terms of just don't be betting on when you're playing baseball. It's just as simple as that. Hitting for the Cycle is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/CGB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. All right, this is I think can't talk right now. This is, I think, the biggest part of our show, right? Is the aftermath of the MLB trade deadline. And and Ryan, you did mention to open up the program that you felt like this was one of the bigger trade deadlines. I mean, I agree with you. I think this was one of the bigger trade deadlines that we have seen in quite some time. And I do think that there was a lot of teams, including your team, and there's a lot of other teams that did get a hell lot better. Of course, we talked about last week, Josh Naylor was one of the first moves that got traded over to the Seattle Mariners. Gregory Soto was another guy as well, too, that got traded over to the New York Mets. So there were a couple moves beforehand, but yesterday and Wednesday were two days, of course, that really just it opened the floodgates and then some. So, I mean, I don't even know where you want to start, Ryan. I guess if you just want to kind of start with our teams to kind of start off, and then we can kind of go around the league. Ryan, your team did pretty well, I would say, for the most part. I mean, you guys, of course, needed to address the bullpen. Of course, you guys were one of the when it comes in terms of bullpen, you guys are one of the worst when it comes to holding leads. Of course, you had a lot of guys between injuries. Of course, Fernando Cruz was kind of a guy that maybe could kind of come in and help out. But he, of course, has had some injury problems. Luke Weaver's been another guy that has had some injury issues, but of course, he's been fairly solid for the most part, even though he's had some hiccups in the last couple of weeks. And then you've had Devin Williams, who's been kind of a up and down journeyman, a guy that you obviously brought in to kind of be that closing role or the eighth inning guy. And he just simply hasn't been as advertised, I think, as anticipated as maybe what was out to be. But you guys went out and you guys didn't go out and get a starter, which I think was a little bit shocking. But I do think that you guys had a pretty solid deadline. I mean, you guys not only went to go get one big time impact guy, you got 3 impact guys. And now I think that not only it really helps you out in terms of getting later on in games, you now have a flexibility in which, of course, if Devin Williams just doesn't have it or Luke Weaver doesn't have it, you now have some other guys too where you can go out and say, listen, give me this ball to go, and they have really good stats too. It's not like you went out and just got scraps specifically. You went and got out some really good time pitchers. Of course, David Bednar, from the Pittsburgh Pirates, 17 of 17 comes to saves. He, of course, was a little bit sluggish the last couple of years for Pittsburgh, but it's really kind of clocked back into his prime old days this year. And then you went out and got somebody from Colorado and Jake Bird, who actually had, I think I heard you guys getting before the deadline started. Bird, I think, is one of the best, players from the Rockies from this year. Had some really good, fascinating stats. So I think, of course, you could put him in the 7th inning, in the 8th inning, even close if needed. And then you went out and got Camilo Duvall pretty much right at the buzzer. And Duvall is somebody that I think has the stuff. I think the last couple of years has been a little bit rocky when it comes to some of his command. I did see, of course, that this year against my Sox, but he has the stuff. So I do think that, of course, the Yankee fans, including yourself, probably felt that with Brian Cashman, in terms of his inefficiency when it comes to transaction and moves the last couple of years. I feel like most Yankee fans can come out and say, listen, give you a lot of credit for what you did, because I think that was pretty much the emphasis of need was their bullpen. I know, of course, with your offense, you guys got Jose Caballero, which I think is a very underrated move. Of course, you have him on the bench. He's one of the best stealers, of course, in baseball. And then, of course, you guys got Austin Slater to kind of help against lefties, and Ahmad Rosario as well too. So Ryan, you did pretty well, kind of given. I expect, of course, Ryan McMahon as well too. That was obviously your first move as well too. So you guys made a plethora of moves, and I felt like you guys made a lot of moves that I think are kind of some impactful moves in different areas. Of course, McMahon for his defense, Caballero for his speed, Rosario against lefty as well as Slater, and then of course you guys got some bullpen pieces. So Ryan, you guys did well. I mean, I can't lie as a Sox fan. I can't sit here and say, listen, I can't crap on you at all. Really happy for you specifically. And not looking forward to this post-deadline Yankees possibly. I mean, you guys did pretty well. I can't lie.
No, I think it's obvious from me. You know me. People who have listened to us on this podcast for the past 2 seasons, that I'm pretty hard on the Yankees and Brian Cashman specifically, like many Yankee fans are. Us Yankee fans are spoiled at times, and at times maybe a little ungrateful at times. But at the end of the day, we all just want the Yankees to be better, and we want them obviously to win the championship every single year. They're not going to win every single year; that's impossible. But we still hold them to that unrealistic standard. And regardless, Cashman, for all the crap he gets, and he does get a lot of crap, and sometimes it's fair. Sometimes he does moves that just make absolutely no sense, or he makes too little moves, or makes no moves at all, like he did 2 years ago at the 2023 deadline, and everybody came for his head after that. For all of the crap that he gets, you got to remember, at the end of the day, he is an experienced general manager. He's been doing this for almost 30 years. And yeah, he's been in a slump and, winning the World Series. But at the same time, he does know how to get creative, and he does know how to make moves that can help the Yankees win at the end of the day. And with that being said, I did like the deadline for the Yankees. It would be very hard to not like what the Yankees did. I mean, if I had one nitpick with this deadline, it's the fact that the Yankees didn't improve on their starting rotation. I'm still kind of ambivalent with their rotation, but besides a couple of names, that were moved at the deadline, not a lot of teams did get starting pitching. If you look around the league, it was pretty light on the starting pitching. I mean, we in the past couple of weeks we were talking about how we could see some guys moved like Zach Gallen and Sandy Alcantara and was it Mitch Keller from the Pirates?
Mitch Keller, Merrill Kelly was really the only one that got moved.
Yeah, and for the most part, most starting pitchers stayed put. They weren't moved. So I mean, you can't really say the Yankees didn't do enough. They did more than most teams did at this deadline. And I did like you mentioned, the first move that the Yankees made was getting Ryan McMahon from Colorado. And I did like the move. I wasn't super ecstatic about it, but McMahon, he's a left-handed bat, which is always a plus when you play at Yankee Stadium. He's also solid in the field, and the Yankees desperately need to get better at defense, so that definitely helps them out on the infield. So already that's showing positive signs. He's made a couple of sparkling plays in the field this past week, and he delivered a walk-off hit against Tampa Bay a couple of nights ago as well. So McMahon's been working out so far. The other offensive pieces, like you mentioned, Ahmed Rosario. He's a veteran. He probably won't start that much, but he can go into the game for defense later on. Like you mentioned, Jose Caballero. The Yankees, I think, are going to be primarily using him more so for defense and as a pinch runner because he's tied for the league in steals right now. And I keep forgetting the guy that we got from. I keep forgetting the guy's name from Chicago that we got.
Slater.
Oh, Slater. Oh, yeah, Slater. I don't really know much about him other than the fact that he can hit lefties.
That's really it. That's all you need to know. I mean, Ryan, the one thing about the Yankees that I think you can agree with me with is their bench has just not been great the last couple of years, and I think that with the overall deadline, yesterday and the day before, you guys really straightened out that bench, and I think that it gives days off for some other guys that are starters, just a breather, and I think that helps a lot, especially during the dog days of summer and towards October.
It does. I mean, like you mentioned, the Yankees bench has really been very thin in recent years. I mean, they've just gone through a revolving door of bench guys for the past couple of years. I mean, for God's sake, we had guys like Willie Calhoun, freaking Jahmai Jones,
Yankee legend,
Billy McKinney. I mean, for God's sake, these guys are just not going to necessarily light up the scoreboard. So. I mean, it's good that the Yankees. I mean, the guys that the Yankees got. I mean, I'm not expecting them to put up huge numbers, like I mentioned. I expect them though to at least make an impact in the game. Just do what they're called to do. And another thing that I think the Yankee fans should give Cashman credit for. A lot of the guys that he got at this year's deadline, they have years. They're not going to just be rentals for the most part. These guys have a lot of control. They can be here for a couple of years down the road. So, I think that was also a positive thing that, fans can look at. And, the biggest storyline, though, when it comes with the Yankees is their bullpen. And, the bullpen has been their biggest weakness this entire year. I think since the beginning of June, I believe it was the second highest ERA. The bullpen had the second highest ERA in the entire league. I think the Nationals only had it worse. But I mean, the Yankees this year, the bullpen has just been a mess. A lot of guys have been going down with injuries, and the Yankees have some big names, big name arms who are still currently injured. Mark Leiter Jr., Jake Cousins, Fernando Cruz, Ryan Yarbrough. I mean, Cousins is just underwent Tommy John surgery, so we're not going to see him for a long time. Yeah. But regardless. Jonathan Loaiza, came back after missing over a year of action, but he has really struggled this year, especially with home runs. He's been giving up more home runs this year than he has ever had at any point in his career. Ian Hamilton, they had to send him down to make room for some of these guys, but Hamilton's been very shaky this year. Scott Efros, a complete disaster. I don't know why he's still in the Yankee organization. The guy's just been hurt the whole time, and when he's been pitching for the Yankees, he's been absolute garbage. So I don't know why the Yankees didn't just DFA with him. I mean, they sent him down, I guess, because he's got options, and they don't want to give up on him just yet. But I would have cut the cord with that guy a long time ago. But that's a story for another day. But yeah, I mean, the arms that the Yankees got, Dave Bednar, Josh Bird, and Camilo Doval. What was that?
Jake Bird. You said Josh.
Jake Bird. Sorry, I was thinking of. I think I was thinking of Josh Bard, the other reliever from. Yeah, and I just got the names mixed up.
No worries.
But regardless, those are big names. Those are good names for the Yankees to have, and that definitely strengthens the bullpen. I mean, I think the Yankee fans were wanted David Bednar more than anybody, especially once the last couple of hours of the deadline started to tick down, and some of the other big relief names were starting to come off the market, which we'll talk about later on in the episode. It was essential for the Yankees to get Bednar because that was the case, and Jake Bird is another good arm that the Yankees had. I mean, that the Yankees acquired. I mean, his numbers in Colorado aren't pretty, but you got to remember it's Colorado, and Colorado is arguably the worst stadium to pitch in. Camilo Doval was a huge shock. I did not expect the Yankees to make that move, and that was really exciting. I mean, my biggest concern with that, though, is Doval does have command issues, and the Yankees, it seems like, despite, whatever these guys throw that the Yankees get, they can have the filthiest stuff imaginable, but they really struggle with command and walks, and the Yankee bullpen has really struggled with walks this entire season. So, you just hope that Doval can, get it together in New York and doesn't walk the park. But yeah, I mean, it was a good deadline for the Yankees, no doubt about it. And you can make an argument that they had the best deadline in baseball. I mean, we'll talk about our winners and losers later on in this episode. But regardless, I can't really complain if I'm a Yankee fan. I definitely think they're a better team now than they were last week. And, they're also, I think, 3 or 3.5 games back of Toronto in the American League East. And, I don't know if the Yankees, I mean, that's not necessarily that huge of a deficit to make up, especially since the Yankees and the Blue Jays have one more series against each other this year. So, yeah, I think one way or the other, the Yankees are going to be in the playoffs this year. Whether they're the division winner or if they had to play in the wild card round, obviously has yet to be seen. Regardless, though, I think the Yankees, if the Blue Jays, even though they're in first place, I think the Yankees are going to make the Blue Jays earn that division title if the Blue Jays want that division title. I think it's going to be a dogfight down the stretch. I think it's going to be close between those two teams for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you got to give you guys a lot of credit. And I just think that you just hope that a lot of these guys, ball out. And I think for you guys, you're going to do pretty well. I really do. In terms of my baseball team, this is, I think, the best way to say this. I thought it was tomorrow. That's a picture of our general manager, Craig Breslow. Ryan, you were actually doing the Craig Breslow presser, I believe, off the, when we were talking off the air. Yeah, I got some. I want to try to be as, because I let it out all pretty much yesterday, but I didn't like what we did at all. I really don't. I was pretty underwhelmed the fact that we're in a pretty good position where we are standing wise. We're 7-8 games over 500. We just took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers this past weekend, which was an incredible series victory. And then we took 2 out of 3 against the Minnesota Twins, in which, frankly, we should have swept, but it didn't work out, right, in that first game. Of course, we had the 9th inning, had the rain delay, and then Jordan Hicks came in and just, couldn't find the strike zone at all around midnight on Monday. But, yeah, the Red Sox, Ryan made 2 moves. They made 2 really, kind of man moves. I was expecting a lot more. I was expecting a couple guys, like I mentioned right now, Merrill Kelly, Josh Naylor, Ryan O'Hearn. And when a lot of these guys are kind of starting to get out the market, I really wasn't too worried, I think, early on. But then when I got to about 3 to 4 o'clock, I think a lot of Red Sox Nation on X was starting to lose patience and saying, what's going on? Like where is this guy? We gotta make a move. And I think, Ryan, the best way to describe the Red Sox is I do think that they were making panic moves. I think it got to a point in which I don't know if Craig was really kind of in the mood for making these overall deals. Besides, he had some very interesting words. He actually was just on Boston radio this morning, and I would be able to say that I'm surprised by this. But he basically said something to the lines of, "We felt like we didn't need to go out and and really improve this team pitching wise. We just felt like there wasn't any much more that we could have really done besides making an effort." Um, yeah, no. I don't know, Ryan, what this guy's made for. I don't know if he's made for being a general manager, because the goal of being a general manager is to improve your baseball team. And it's one thing if there wasn't a lot of moves that were happening. This was one of the most busiest trade deadlines that's out there. Another reason too is they traded Rafael Devers. Probably still one of the biggest moves that they made, but it was 2 months before the overall deadline. And he believed, Craig Breslow said, after Rafael Devers got traded, that we're going to be a better baseball team coming out of this than before. Okay, so if you're going to say that and then you're going to say we're going to be buyers, you essentially gaslighted our fan base once again. And I would say that I'm surprised, but I'm not, because I've been seeing the same exact story for the last 4 to 5 years. And it's at a point too where I'm not even upset anymore. I'm just like, this is just kind of the overall constant theme of this organization. As long as John Henry is there, they aren't going to change the overall ways, no matter who's pretty much under him. So he's basically the scapegoat, but I don't like essentially what he's trying to do at all too, because I do feel like there is some blame out of this. The Joe Ryan social media stuff that was posted,
Yeah.
I still cannot believe that was out there. I was ready to crash out badly after the fact is that they had to delete it not only once but twice. And then, of course, I read after the fact that we included the password in the overall deal for Joe Ryan, but we did, of course, want to include a big time player, which probably they were asking for Jarren Duran or Willie Abreu, Cedric Rafaela. So completely underwhelming for this team, especially because the American League is really wide open. And it's one thing if a lot of teams around you didn't get better. We'll talk a lot about these other teams, of course, outside the Yankees, but a lot of other teams got a lot better. And we're pretty much right in the thick of it. And we're playing the Houston Astros, who ended up getting better yesterday, this weekend. So I really want to be upset, but I'm not surprised, in which the fact is the Red Sox underwhelmed badly.
Yeah, that was very surprising. I mean, I know you said it's not necessarily that surprising to you because it seems like they do this every single year. But, you guys are basically, neck and neck with us in the standings right now. You're only, I think, like 2 games behind us in the wild card or something like that, maybe a game and a half. But that was just very surprising that you guys didn't put in more effort and try and get some guys. I mean, according to Breslow, the asking prices for some of these guys was just too much. I mean, I know that, the Red Sox have arguably the best farm system in Major League Baseball right now. Take advantage of that and, cut the cord with some guys and try and get, more notable players and try and improve the Major League club. Not every, even though the Red Sox have the best farm system in Major League Baseball, not every single prospect is going to blossom once they get to Major League Baseball. Some guys are going to flounder. So, if that's just going to happen. That's the nature of the game. So, it's worth the risk, if you ask me, to cut the cord with some guys and to, try and get better players. We mentioned it last week. We thought Joe Ryan was a perfect fit for the Red Sox rotation. And, the fact that they didn't end up getting him, I think, is inexcusable, considering that the Twins basically gave away their entire team. And that was just – that, in my opinion, is egregious. The Red Sox should have gone Joe Ryan. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Dustin May, they got Dustin May from the Dodgers. May, he looks like a Red Sox. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it with the hair and the scruff and all that stuff. The guy looks like he's made to being a Red Sox. The guy looks like he belongs in the 2013 Red Sox team. And May is good.
Sorry to cut you off, Ryan. I don't really hate the moves that we made, but I just expected a lot better. And the fact that they didn't address really the main pieces in which they can have to really kind of put their team over the top, that's what really aggravates me.
Yeah, I mean, May is good, but I don't think he's great. And Steven Matz, I think, is past his prime. So, I mean, the moves they're not awful, but like you said, they're just very meh. Like, you're not going to get excited necessarily. Oh, we got like a 35-year-old Steven Matz. Let me do a cartwheel. You're not going to say that. And,
yeah, no, 100%.
Like, and the Red Sox, it's one thing that you traded Rafael Devers this year, but the fact that you traded him last month and didn't – if you were going to trade Rafael Devers, I don't know if it necessarily – because the Red Sox started playing a lot better, once they traded Devers.
And that's the thing. Craig Breslow essentially said that after, of course, that we went through like a 10-game winning streak before the obviously the All-Star break. He feels like specifically it's almost like this is what the Red Sox do sometimes is they play extremely really good ball at times in which like they don't feel like they need to add because it's like, okay, we already have this team at home. Like we don't really feel like we have to add. And I just don't like that way of operating because they sometimes feel like the prospects are just going to be the working out phase. Ken Rosenthal had a video yesterday. He basically said that the Red Sox failed again. 100% agree. And they did this last year at the trade deadline. Now, I will disagree with you, Ryan, in terms of Joe Ryan, because I do think that they did try to make an effort for him, and I just don't think specifically they crossed the finish line. And they tried that with Garrett Crochet a couple of years ago at the trade deadline, and look what happened. They were able to basically kind of sweeten the deal in the offseason, and they were able to get their man. So I do think that there was a potential happening for this. But the fact is there were so many guys out there. Heck, I would have even taken Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton, I mean, I wasn't thinking about it, but Charlie Morton is a guy that was a veteran and could have came in. Like, Steven Matz, I think, is okay because he could do well against lefties and he could come in as a bullpen piece. Dustin May, okay, it's whatever, right? But they were interested in Eugenio Suarez at first base. Pretty much that's what Rosenthal said. And so if you were interested in Eugenio Suarez, I was thinking that, okay, they were looking at other things as well. Yandy Diaz, apparently they were looking at, but they didn't get Ron O'Hearn and they didn't get Josh Naylor. Two guys specifically I thought were going to be perfect pieces. So my best guess is they wanted to get a righty first baseman, and it just didn't work out, which I just don't like because you're selling yourself short. And this is, I think, what the organization's been doing way too much is they're selling themselves short. And look at like the Orioles, for instance, right? The Orioles a couple of years ago had a very, very deep farm system. And we thought specifically that they're kind of on the rise and stuff like that. And now it's just kind of a bumpy road. And it's like, you don't really know. Like you said, Ryan, we have arguably one of the top prospecting, pools in baseball, right? And you obviously have Roman Anthony, you have Marcelo Mario, you have Christian Campbell, but you have pieces that are expendable to move. And I just felt like this was a deadline that was so big that you could have been able to get something a lot better than what you did. It's completely underwhelmed.
Yeah, I agree. They definitely needed to do more, especially since, like you said, so many teams around the league did so many more moves. And, the Red Sox right now, they currently hold the second wild card spot in the American League. They're 59-51. They're only a game behind they're a game up on Seattle for that second wild card spot. And it looks like, I think they're only a game and a half behind the Yankees for the first wild card spot. So, but I'm looking at the wild card standings right now. Texas has caught fire, and they improved at the deadline. Mm-hmm. So, the Yankees, Red Sox, Mariners, and Rangers are all bundled up in there, and there are only 3 wild card spots. One team is going to be on the outside looking in at the end of the year. And, I'm not saying it because, I don't like them or anything like that, but, based on the moves that were made, at the deadline, if I had to pick who that team would be, on the outside of those 4 teams, it would probably be the Red Sox because it just didn't do enough. I just think that they needed to do more, and I just think that the Yankees made better moves than they did. The Mariners, I thought, made better moves than they did. I thought the Rangers did too. So like I said, not saying the Red Sox would be on the outside looking in because I don't like them. I just don't think they did enough to earn a wild card spot. We'll see what happens. I could be wrong. We're only it's the beginning of August, so I got two more full months. But still, like, it was, like you said, very underwhelming trade deadline. And you just hope this isn't a repeat of last year. I think the Red Sox actually honestly had a better trade deadline last year than they did this year, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's what it is now. Like, they have to obviously have who they have, and they've had guys like Brian Bayo and Giolito really kind of turn into a lot better pitchers this year. So they're kind of hopefully banking more in house than not. So we'll have to see. But it was just tough. It was tough, but can't look past that. I can sit here and be upset, but you kind of just have to see kind of what happens. I mean, they've been proving me wrong and been playing a lot better baseball throughout this year more than ever. So we just kind of have to see what happens and kind of revisit kind of the other stuff in the front office in the offseason. All right, Ryan. So, of course, outside of our teams, there was a lot of movement that happened. Let's go to really quickly the National League, right? So the National League, we had really 3 teams that made some big-time moves. With the San Diego Padres, my goodness, the San Diego Padres, if it wasn't the New York Yankees, I think the San Diego Padres and A.J. Preller completely turned this trade deadline upside down for what they did. They pretty much addressed almost every single type of need that they made and then some. They went out and made 2 big-time blockbuster deal. Of course, one of them for sure was. And the first one was Mason Miller, the flamethrower closer from the Oakland Athletics, who basically had 3 more years under control. A.J. Preller decided to go out and not only just adds that lethal bullpen, they got one of the best bullpen arms out there in baseball to add to that lethal bullpen with guys like Robert Suarez, Jason Adam, and now you have Mason Miller. So that back end, good freaking luck if you're in an opposition team. That was a hell of a move for the Padres. However, they had to give up a haul back. They gave up Luis DeVries, who's one of the top prospects, with the San Diego Padres to the A's. I'll tell you what with the A's, man. The A's have some really good future guys coming in. I think that as tough as it was to trade a guy like Mason Miller, they did pretty well with obviously the return that they had back. San Diego, I think, is a really good farm system. So, of course, I do think that they got some really good pieces for them for sure. And then they got Ryan O'Hearn, who I really wanted. They obviously added him for the first base. And they got Ramon Laureano, who's had a very underrated year coming into the straight line with the Baltimore Orioles. So he, of course, could help out with their righty bat. And then they got guys like Will Wagner, I think, for their catching position. So, I mean, they went absolutely crazy. They really, I think, were a complete winner for sure. And then the New York Mets and David Stearns, the other team in New York, I thought did very, very well. They obviously added a couple bullpen arms. They got Gregory Soto to open it up. And then they got a summer main pitcher, and Taylor Rogers had a very good first half. He had one of the best ERAs in relief the whole entire baseball season, even though that they had to get rid of Tidwell, Jose Buto, and I don't think it was Sproat. They gave up somebody else that was pretty. Oh, it was Drew Gilbert. So that was a pretty good hefty haul, but they did pretty well with that. And then they went out and they got Cedric Mullins, who I think was a very, very good move for them. He hasn't really been hitting a lot offensively, but I do think he could provide some pop and is a very good defensive player. And then they got Ryan Helsley, who is one of the best closers in baseball as well too. So the New York Mets, they really had to add some pieces, especially in that bullpen. And they got 3 guys, very similar area, like honestly to the Yankees in a way, but for the National League side. So got to give the Mets a lot of credit. And then the Phillies desperately have needed a back end guy in the closing role for Ions, and they probably got my favorite guy potentially at this trade deadline. That is Johan Duran from the Minnesota Twins. So 3 teams, Ryan, I think that got extremely better, drastically better, and they got 3 of the best closers in baseball. So the National League did really, really well, especially with those 3 teams.
Yeah, all 3 of those teams definitely improved. There's no doubt about that. I mean, the Padres, they really went all in for this season. They are determined. I think this trade deadline proves that the Padres are more determined now than ever to get back to the World Series for the first time in almost 30 years. And, I mean, the fact that they got Mason Miller is huge. It should be illegal. That bullpen for the Padres, it's illegal. I mean, the rest of the National League West is going to have a hell of a time
Yeah.
trying to hit that bullpen. The rest of Major League Baseball, I should say, too, is going to have a hell of a time trying to hit that bullpen. And the offensive moves weren't too shabby either. Like you mentioned, Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano. They also got Freddie Fermin from the Royals.
Yep.
So Padres, did themselves a lot of good at this year's deadline. The Phillies, huge problem for them has always been that bullpen. It's been unreliable, especially in the postseason, especially last year against the Mets. And getting Johan Duran from Minnesota definitely helps them out. I mean, they've been running Jordan Romano out there this year, but Romano is one of the shakiest closers in baseball. He's never makes it easy. So bringing in Duran, Duran sometimes can be a little shaky with his command. For the most part, he's very elite. He'll close the game, obviously more times than not. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the gas that he just throws. I mean, he consistently hits like 101, 102 with relative ease. It's absolutely
a 97-mile-an-hour splitter to have that too.
Yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. And the Mets too. I mean, the Mets, their bullpen needed some upgrading, and getting Halsey from the Cardinals definitely upgrades that bullpen. I mean, in terms of their offense, they didn't really get too many bats. I mean, Mullins, he's a veteran, but he's more well known for his glove than his bat.
He's like a lefty Harrison Bader. That's how I would. Yeah,
basically. And I mean, those three teams definitely, got better. It'll be fun to see the Phillies and the Mets duke it out for the rest of the year. We'll see who comes out on top as the NL East champs. I mean, and we'll see if those teams. I think those teams could be on a collision course for a rematch in the postseason this year.
That'd be electric.
That would be a lot of fun. I mean, the Mets obviously won last year. If I were to choose right now between those two teams,
I'm going with the Mets.
I'm still going Mets.
Yeah.
Especially with Soto there now. I think the Mets are still a better team than the Phillies. The Phillies, they're getting up there in age, even though they're still a very good team. But I don't really trust the Phillies when it comes time for postseason baseball. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun battle in the National League.
Yep. And, of course, Ryan, we go back to the American League. And American League West really got loaded up. Of course, we talked last week with Josh Naylor going to the Seattle Mariners. They went out and said, listen, we're going to get a reunited bat to be with Josh Naylor, and a reunited bat specifically that has been there before, and that is Geno Suarez. Now, this, of course, was obviously probably the biggest power bat that was out there at the trade deadline. I mean, you just don't see guys that hit 30, 35 homers before the deadline and have a guy be traded. He did have an injury scare right before the overall deadline, unfortunately, but thankfully he was back and he was okay. He went 1-for-4 yesterday with a double and the 6-0 win for the Mariners against the Texas Rangers. Really big series, by the way. I just think they got very good two big bats. We talked about, like we said in the past for a while now, Ryan, the Mariners in the offseason really outside of Cal Raleigh, Randy Arozarena, and Julio Rodriguez, they really didn't add a lot, in the offseason when it comes to the bats. Well, Jerry Lapoto said, listen, take that. Let's go to the trade deadline and get two of the biggest bats that are out there at the trade deadline and give them credit. I didn't think specifically that the Mariners were going to go out and get two of those bats, two bats specifically that I wish I had on my team. But yeah, give the Mariners a lot of credit. And then how about the Houston Astros? Houston Astros have been a team that just seems to just never go away. Just when you thought after getting swept against the Oakland Athletics in Houston, they decide to say, and Dana Brown says, well, the Empire is trying to stay as long as possible. And they go out and they get a reunitement with somebody specifically that has terrorized their baseball teams in the past. Not as much as before, not as much as our teams recently, because he's been on a different team. And that is Carlos Correa, a former Houston Astro, a World Series champion Houston Astro that was on the Minnesota Twins a couple years ago. He is now back with the Houston Astros. That was one of the more shocking moves, I think, I'm not shocked, but I'm shocked at the same time because reportedly Correa didn't want to leave Minnesota unless it was for the Houston Astros, and I think that he got his wish, and he gets to go play now third base for the Houston Astros. I'm not looking forward to that this upcoming week, and of course, he has to face our teams back-to-back weekends. So, Ryan, we're going to be in for a fun treat, to say the least. But then the Houston Astros weren't done. They actually went out, got a really good underrated bat in Jesus Sanchez, who I think has some pretty good metrics coming over from Miami. So I think he's going to do some wonders for them. They really need to add to their outfield. So I think Sanchez was a good move. So the Houston Astros got two very good pieces, including a piece that is a reunited piece that has helped them win for ions for sure. And then the Texas Rangers. We talked about the Texas Rangers, right? They've been really playing a lot of good baseball as of late. They went out and got Danny Colombe, who is a really good southpaw. I think a really underrated piece that they got, that the Rangers really need some help, especially in the lefty standpoint. They do have Kobe Allard there, but they don't really have much there besides that. And then they got Merrill Kelly, who I really wanted the Red Sox to get badly. The Rangers and Chris Young basically swooped him in last minute and pretty much said, yeah, you're not getting him on your team. So now the Texas Rangers have Merrill Kelly, Jacob deGrom, Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter, and Nathan Eovaldi. Pretty good if you ask me for Texas. I think you picked the Texas Rangers, Ryan, in your preseason poll. So the American League West got really, really good, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Me neither. The Carlos Correa going back to the Astros, when that news broke yesterday, I just went, of course. Of freaking course. Yeah, that is not going to be fun. We face the Astros next week at Yankee Stadium, so I guarantee you he's going to hit at least one home run in that series. Correa, even when he was a Twin, Correa torches the Yankees. He's one of the biggest Yankee killers in the game, whether he's wearing an Astros uniform or a Twins uniform. And, Correa, you look at the past couple of years, he's obviously not the same player he was when he first came up with the Astros. Yeah. And unfortunately, injuries have just derailed him from reaching his full potential. So I don't think he'll ever, reach the heights that he could have possibly reached. But regardless, he's still a dangerous hitter. You make a mistake and he can hit it a mile away. He's always been a great defender. We'll see how he does at the transition to third base. I honestly don't think he'll have that much of a problem with it. He's very athletic. He can move well to his left and his right. He's always had good range. So, it really just depends on if Correa, I think more so than anything else, can just stay healthy. I think that's just the only thing that really is the concern if you're the Astros. I mean, the Astros are going to be taking on the bulk of the remaining contract that Correa has, which is still pretty big. Mm-hmm. So, in all likelihood, Correa is going to maybe finish his career where it began in Houston. It's going to be reunited.
As much as we would hate it, he is the villain. Him and Altuve are just the guys that are saying, like, we're villains and we don't care.
Yeah, well, with Bregman splitting, now they got two members from that first championship in 2017. So,
Bregman, don't go back, for all I ask. Red Sox, if you do this to me, I will not forgive you. I will not forgive you not only to not pay him, but I will not forgive you for that. So do not do it.
Of all teams you could trade him back to, you trade him back to Houston. That could. The only thing worse would be if he went to the Yankees, for Red Sox fans, obviously. But regardless, Astros undoubtedly are going to be back in the playoffs again for the 1,000th time. Not looking forward to that. The Mariners, it's about time they made some moves. That's all I can say. And, I'm reading this article off of ESPN, David Schoenfield, and he declared the Mariners the winners at the deadline. And and that's a pretty good argument, honestly. They made really solid moves. If there's one little nitpick that I have with the Mariners, and it was mentioned in this article by Schoenfield, they could have used at least one more elite reliever. If they had got one of those big names that we had talked about, like Bednar, Helsley, or Duran, that would
like Griffin Jacks. Because Munoz is pretty good in the closing role, but Griffin Jacks went over to the Rays, which of course is going to be an absolute demon there, which I'm not looking forward to that. Even though the Rays aren't great, I didn't like that at all. That just feels like a Rays move. But even if they got a guy like that.
Yeah. The only guy they really got to help improve the bullpen was Caleb Ferguson from Pittsburgh. So that's not necessarily going to move the needle that much. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, other than that, the Mariners did great, and I think they have a very good shot this year. This might be one of the. I mean, I think right now the Mariners are a better team this year than they were in 22.
Absolutely.
I think they can really, really, be a bigger threat to the Astros and the rest of the American League this year than.
They could be, Ryan, this year's Detroit Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they'll win the division. I'm not going to make any assumptions with that, but
Yeah.
the Astros have the experience, and they always seem to come out on top, especially against division opponents. So, the Astros and the Mariners, I think, it's going to be a fun battle between those two, and the Rangers are right down the necks of both teams as well. So it's a three-way battle here.
We thought the Rangers were done. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we thought that they were ready to sell some pieces away, and they have really completely turned around. I mean, gotta give them a lot of credit. And did you see the Adolis Garcia potentially the breaking news? I mean, outside the Joe Ryan thing, we thought that Adolis Garcia was going to Queens. I mean, that was going to be like what? Like,
no, and also, I mean, the Yankees. We actually have a tough schedule ahead of us right now. We're in Miami this weekend, and the Marlins are not playing bad.
Yeah.
Marlins are playing good. Then we got to go to Texas, and then Houston comes to town.
Oh,
so these next three series are going to be absolute hell.
We have Houston, Kansas City, and then San Diego. So we're in the same boat. Yeah, yeah. So we're going to be both in for some very tight, strap-in type of series. Although we just played a lot of really good teams and we went within a 500 record, so we could talk about that more on the Bonanza. Hopefully, you guys can tune over there for that.
All right, yeah. I think that kind of covers the deadline for the most part. I mean, we can move on to the winners and losers, I guess, because I think that's the next segment.
Well, let's have that for our Bonanza. We're just going to go to our who was hot and who was not segment because we are kind of running out of time, and I do kind of want to have my names kind of. I feel like the last couple weeks have been kind of just like running out of time, so we've just been saying names just to say them. Ryan, my who was not, and this is actually coming from your team. This has been a guy that I have not liked what's been going on. I know he's obviously getting up there. Paul Goldschmidt for the Yankees, I think, is really significantly, I think, cooled off, compared to what he's had. He's really struggled against righties. Watching a lot of your games, Ryan, I just feel like early on in the season, I thought that he was going to be like a really good player. I mean, he's still batting 282, but he's just recently, it's been a really tough stretch for Mr. Goldie, popping the ball up a lot, striking out a lot. I mean, I can't really knock him too much because, of course, he's getting up there, but I'm going to call it a buck. I'm going to go Paul Goldschmidt, my who's not for the week.
All right. I got to find a who's not because I can go in only so many directions here. For who is hot, though, I do have a guy. For who's hot, I'm going to go Nick Kurtz of the A's. He's been
really good one. Yeah.
He's been really hitting recently. He's 9 for his last 19 with 4 home runs, 8 RBIs. I mean, those 4 home runs, 4 home run game last weekend against the Astros. And he also made an outstanding diving play a couple of days ago against the Mariners to seal a win for the A's. So Kurtz, guy looks like he could be a cornerstone piece for the A's for the future. So he is my who is hot currently.
My who is hot, Ryan. I got this guy. I've not had this guy yet. And you're actually going to be facing this guy this upcoming weekend. Woo! Kyle Stowers from the Miami Marlins. I'm going to give some recognition to the Marlins for a change this week. Kyle Stowers, man, has been incredible, Ryan. He's rocking a 298 average, 570 slug with a 949 OPS. Last year he had a 797 OPS. So he almost has an 1,000 OPS leading into the trade deadline, which is absolutely incredible. And he has 23 homers. Kyle Stowers last year had 3 homers with the Orioles. I mean, this guy has just been absolutely incredible for that team. So that's my who is hot.
All right, my who is not. This was a name that was brought up. That was brought up at the beginning of the season that could have been traded. This was a name that also was brought up at one point during the trade deadline of a guy who could have been moved. And this guy, it's sad because he's a hell of a ball player and he's a future Hall of Famer.
I know who you're
Nolan
talking
Arenado of the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, I was not expecting that one. Okay. I thought you were going to say Robert.
Oh, from the White Sox?
Yeah, I thought you were
he's not a future Hall of Famer, but
well, yeah, I guess we just said Hall of Famer, yeah.
Yeah, but Arenado has not been pretty to watch at all. In his last 7 games, he is 3 for 25 for a 120 batting average. I
didn't know he was going that bad.
He's only hitting 235 this year with 10 home runs and 43 RBIs. It's been a rough season for Arenado, and the Cardinals have come back to earth. A couple of weeks ago, I said that it looks like they're back and they can make some noise this year. No, somebody shot the Redbirds in the sky.
Yeah, and then they trade, of course, their big time closer, which hurts for them for sure. All right, that's going to do it for episode 79 of Hitting for the Cycle. Make sure, of course, to follow us on all of our socials. Of course, like we talked about earlier on in the program. We will see you guys for episode 80, Ryan. Wow, episode 80. We've really done a lot, with start from now until, this season. We're going to pretty much kind of go through a lot of how the teams are going to be doing, post first week of this trade deadline. So we hope to see you guys there.
Adios.